Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 2021 Annual Stockholders Meeting of Semirara Mining and Power Corporation. The Chairman of the Board and Chief Executive Officer, Engineer Isidro A. Consuni, will now preside over the meeting.
The meeting will now come to order. Good morning. On behalf of the Board of Directors, we welcome our fellow stockholders to our 2021 Annual Stockholders Meeting. Our members of the Board, as shown on the screen, are also joining us remotely. Mr. Secretary, has the stockholders of the corporation been duly notified of this meeting?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, our stockholders have been notified of today's meeting. Notice indicating the date, time, venue, and agenda to the stockholders as of record date March 18, 2021, have been sent in accordance with the SEC rules, our bylaws, and the guidelines on the requirements and procedure for electronic voting in absentia, and participation by remote communication for our 2021 Annual Stockholders Meeting, embodied in the definitive information statement approved by the SEC as follows. On March 31, 2021, by disclosure to the Philippine Stock Exchange and by posting at the corporation's website. On April 7 and 8, 2021, by publication in the business section in print and online of the Business World and the Manila Standard.
Mr. Secretary, do you have a quorum for today's meeting?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum for the conduct of today's meeting. As of March 18, 2021, the record date, the corporation has 4,250,547,620 outstanding common shares, and at least with the percentage of shares as shown in the screen of the corporation's outstanding common capital shares owned by the stockholders who have registered through our online portal and have submitted their proxies and is participating remotely or by proxies are present at today's meeting. Mr. Chairman, the stockholders present in accordance with their mode of attendance and percentage of their outstanding common shares held by them will be reflected in the stockholders' minutes of meeting.
We are conducting our annual stockholders meeting via webcast due to the government's regulation restricting in-person meeting and gatherings to safeguard the health and safety of our stockholders in view of the COVID-19 pandemic. This webcast will allow our stockholders to participate in this meeting as if it were an in-person meeting. Mr. Secretary, will you please apprise our stockholders of the requirements and procedures for participation and voting in absentia in this meeting?
Mr. Chairman, the requirements and procedure are set forth in the definitive information statement and in the explanation of agenda, which forms part of our notice of meeting. The following are the highlights as shown on the screen. Number 1, stockholders who successfully registered to attend and participate in this meeting may send their questions to Corporate Secretary at semirarampc.com. Questions will be addressed after other matters in the agenda, while others will be replied to via email. Number 2, voting is allowed only for stockholders who are able to register in the voting in absentia and through the chairman of the board as proxy. The voting portal shall remain open until 5 p.m. of today's meeting. Next, each of the proposed resolution for adoption and approval by the stockholders shall be shown during the course of the meeting. Number 4, except for the election of directors, all items in the agenda for approval requires an affirmative vote of stockholders representing at least majority of the outstanding voting stock present at today's meeting. And number 5, Sisip Gores Velayo and Company, or SGV, and the Office of the Corporate Secretary are designated as the Board of Canvassers to tabulate and validate the votes received. The results shall be reported by the Corporate Secretary during the course of the meeting. The casting of votes started last April 26, 2021. I shall report on this partial tabulation of votes during the course of the meeting. The final results of the votes shall be reflected in the stockholders' minutes of meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before proceeding with the next agenda, our Chairman of the Board will present his message to our stockholders.
Fellow members of the board, valued shareholders, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the annual stockholders meeting of the Semirara Mining and Power Corporation. For the second time in a row, we are holding this event remotely because of COVID-19. I hope you are safe and well amidst the ongoing surge. Before I proceed, I would like to take a moment to pray for those we lost in this disease and the families they left behind. Let us also pray for the safety of our medical and economic frontliners whose selfless work strengthens our faith during this difficult time. There's no sugarcoating 2020. It was a very bad year for our company. Our profitability dropped to its lowest level in 10 years. Our stock was dropped from the PSE index, and our share price fell 37% year on year from 22 pesos to 13.78 pesos. These outcomes are reflective of the historic lows of the period and the operational headwinds faced by our businesses. In 2020, the Philippines suffered the sharpest recession ever recorded. The 76-day suspension of non-essential work in the first half and the strict quarantine restriction during the rest of the year decimated the economy. Reflecting the volatility and the pessimism of the market, the PSE index plunged by as much as 24% in March before closing 8.6% lower year on year. Both our coal and power businesses suffered significant setbacks because of the pandemic. Global coal prices dropped by more than a fifth as COVID-19 containment measures curbed industrial production and commercial energy use. When demand started to recover in the second semester, China imposed import quotas to boost prices and sales for their domestic producers. Local electricity prices also slumped on lower demand since many businesses closed or operated on reduced capacity during the year. Weak demand, coupled with stable supply, cut average spot prices by half, which magnified the vulnerability of our uncontracted capacity. Further dragging our coal and power businesses were the abnormal water seepages in Molave North Block 7 and multiple outages in our power plants. In early December, we voluntarily deferred mining operations in North Block 7 so we could focus on identifying the source of the seepage and undertake the necessary remedial measures. During the year, our power segment experienced prolonged and unplanned outages because of the Taal volcano eruption, enhanced community quarantine, and boiler tube leaks. The life extension program for SEM Calaca Unit 2 also suffered an unexpected setback when its newly installed generator from GE broke down after 7 months of commercial operations. Our President and COO, Cristina Gutierrez, will provide you with more detailed updates on the status of the Molave North Block 7 and Unit 2 later in her report. These events led to a dramatic drop in our financial results. Our consolidated revenues and net income dropped by 36% and 66% respectively. Coal remained as our performance driver, accounting for the majority of our revenues and net income, while SCPC showed the most improvement. From a net loss of 55 million pesos, SCPC contributed 1.3 billion pesos because of higher power generation and sales. Contributions from SLPGC plummeted 97% to 87 million pesos due to its prolonged maintenance outage in the second quarter and unplanned outages in the second half. Despite these lackluster results, we stayed true to our strong dividend commitment. With the approval of our board, we paid a total cash dividend of 1 peso and 25 centavos per share last April 23. This translated to a payout of 5.3 billion pesos for a dividend payout ratio of 163%. I would like to assure you that 100% of our cash dividend came from our retained earnings and no debt was incurred to fund this payout. For 2021, we expect some improvements on our bottom line as coal and electricity markets recover from last year's historic lows. To take advantage of the upswing, we will capitalize on our COVID-19 resiliency and the adaptation strategy of focusing on our people, finances, and execution skills. However, given our operational headwinds, and until our country reaches herd immunity, it is unlikely that we will return to our pre-pandemic profit level this year. On a more positive note, I am pleased to report that our company was recognized by the Institute of Corporate Directors for our corporate governance effort. SMPC was also included in the 2021 Bloomberg Gender Equality Index. Out of the 380 companies in this global list, 3 came from the Philippines, and I'm proud to report that Semirara and our parent company, DFCI Holdings, held 2 of the 3 spots. At this point, I would like to thank the people who helped us during this exceptionally challenging year. Our board of directors for their service and guidance, our employees for working through the risks and difficulties of COVID-19, and our shareholders, regulators, business partners, host communities, and other stakeholders for their continued trust and support. Without your valuable contributions, our company would not have been able to survive this once-in-a-lifetime pandemic. Ladies and gentlemen, the end of the pandemic remains unclear at this point. Based on recent developments, COVID-19 is hitting our country harder this year because of the new variants. But we cannot live through this period with fear and hopelessness. We have to find a way forward. This means getting vaccinated, strictly following safety protocols, and adapting to the new normal. If we all do our part, we can emerge stronger and faster from this pandemic. Thank you for attending this virtual meeting. Please stay safe and keep well. Magandang umaga sa inyong lahat. The next order of business is the approval of the previous minutes of meeting held on July 3, 2020. The electronic copies of said minutes have been posted and are available at the corporation's website. May I ask our secretary to present the proposed resolution on this item and the results of the voting.
Mr. Chairman, management is proposing for approval of the following resolution as shown in the screen. Resolved that the stockholder of Semirara Mining and Power Corporation be, as it is hereby approve, confirm, and ratify the minutes of the annual stockholders meeting held last July 3, 2020. I am pleased to report that the stockholders voted with a percentage of shares as shown in the screen, favorably adopting the proposed resolution approving the annual stockholders minutes of previous meeting held on July 3, 2020. Therefore, Mr. Chairman, the resolution is approved.
Let us now move to the next order of business, which is the presentation and approval of the President's report. Our President and Chief Operating Officer, Maria Cristina C. Gutierrez, will present to you her report.
Fellow shareholders, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Thank you for attending our annual stockholders meeting. Similar to last year, we are holding this event remotely in accordance with government safety protocols. This is the least we can do to help arrest the resurgence of COVID-19 infections in our communities. Businesses and economies across the world were hit hard by this pandemic. Our company was no exception. In 2020, both our coal and power businesses reeled from low demand and weak prices. Our operating performance was also dragged down by a confluence of adverse events, such as the Taal volcano eruption, widespread lockdowns, water seepages, and defective machinery. In early December, we voluntarily deferred mining activities in Molave North Block 7 because of excessive water seepages. This reduced our coal production by 13% to 13.2 million metric tons. Our coal sales dropped by 16% to 13.1 million metric tons as demand from China declined because of quarantine restrictions and tighter import quotas. This year, we expect our coal business to perform better on the back of recovering consumption and prices. The remedial measures we have been implementing since December have also allowed us to steadily normalize production. Now that the water seepage at NB7 has gone down to manageable levels, we expect annual production to hit 13 million metric tons. Moving on to our power segment. Total power generation rose by 30% with the completion of our life extension program for SEM Calaca Units 1 and 2. With higher availability and average capacity, we were able to increase our total power sales by 14% to 4,218 gigawatt hours, most of which was sold to the spot market. To better manage our market exposure, we have contracted out majority of our dependable capacity. Our goal is to secure bilateral contracts for around 70% of our total capacity by 2022. For this year, we expect uneven results from our power subsidiaries. SLPGC is set to stage a strong profit recovery because of higher plant availability and better spot market prices. Unfortunately, SMPC is likely to deliver disappointing results because of the forced outage of its Unit 2 beginning December 3 last year. The outage was caused by the breakdown of its 7-month-old generator stator. Negotiations with GE, our generator supplier, are ongoing. While they have agreed to cover majority of the costs related to fixing the equipment, we are intent on making them shoulder all the necessary expenses. We expect to complete our negotiations within the year. In the meantime, we are doing our best to fast-track the repair of the generator. If all goes well, Unit 2 can be up and running by third quarter of this year. Despite the challenges and headwinds triggered by the pandemic, I am proud to report that we continue to make significant strides in our ESG program. The final rehabilitation of North Panyan is progressing as planned. We have backfilled over 114 million BCM of overburden in the area. We planted 900 mangroves along the coastline of Semirara Island to replace those damaged by Typhoon Ursula. We also planted over 6,000 nara, mahogany, and molave seedlings in the municipalities of Balayan and Calaca in Batangas under our Adopt a Forest program. At this point, let me now discuss our COVID-19 plans and mitigating measures for 2021. In the coming months, we plan to vaccinate over 5,000 employees and indirect workers in our mine site, power plant complex, and head office. The bulk of our vaccines will go to our Semirara Island workforce, as their location limits their access to timely and quality health care. We will also prioritize employees whom we consider as high risk because of their official interaction and travel outside of their work assignment. As for those who are already qualified to receive jobs under the government vaccination program, we encourage them to do so for their immediate protection. We also committed to help our host LGUs with their COVID-19 response plan. Semirara Island residents who want to be inoculated will receive a free job from our company. We will also assist the LGU in transporting, storing, and administering the vaccines. We are donating 3,000 rapid antigen kits to the Antique provincial government to help them identify positive cases. We have repurposed a building inside our Calaca Power Complex into an employee quarantine facility to decongest the quarantine facilities of the Batangas LGU. To boost our operational resiliency against the COVID-19 surge, we reverted to work from home and flexible work arrangements to reduce the risk of exposure among our office personnel. We increased our employee quarantine facility capacity by 27% to 276 beds. Plant employees who are confirmed or suspected to have COVID-19 will continue to receive their salaries despite being in quarantine. With these measures, our employees will not be forced to choose between livelihood and life. The protracted nature of this pandemic requires us to be vigilant and prudent in our finances. To strengthen our financial position, we will continue to prioritize costs necessary for business continuity. Non-essential expenses will either be cut or deferred. We will strictly monitor customer balances and credit limits to facilitate timely collections, and we will closely supervise supplier contracts to maximize credit terms and firmly enforce clauses that protect the interests of our company. Before I end my report, I would like to share some key changes in our management team. Jaime B. Garcia, Antonio de los Santos, and Nena D. Arenas retired after decades of loyal service. We thank them for their contributions to our company. Carla T. Lavina has been appointed as our Chief Finance Officer, and our predecessor, Junalina Estabor, is now our Chief Risk, Compliance, and Performance Officer. We look forward to their continued growth in their new roles. Ladies and gentlemen, these are unsettling times for all of us. The uncertainty, risks, and desolation that defined 2020 persist even a year into the pandemic. Our company is fortunate to be surrounded by people whose wisdom, fortitude, and support allow us to operate despite such conditions. Our board of directors who provide invaluable guidance, our frontliner and back office employees who bravely adapt to ever-changing work situations, our customers, host communities, and regulators who are the lifeblood of our business, and our shareholders, business partners, and other stakeholders without whom we would not be able to move forward with confidence. Please accept my profound gratitude and appreciation. 2021 is shaping up to be another rough year, but we should remain hopeful that a return to normality is possible, if not inevitable. In the meantime, let us focus on staying well and get vaccinated when our turn comes. I wish you and your loved ones safe passage through this pandemic. Again, thank you for attending our virtual stockholders meeting. Mag-ingat po tayong lahat.
Mr. Secretary, please present the proposed resolution for the approval of the President's report and the results of the voting as delivered by our President and Chief Operating Officer.
Mr. Chairman, management is proposing the following resolution as shown in the screen. Resolved that the stockholders of Semirara Mining and Power Corporation be, as it is hereby approve, confirm, and ratify the President's report as presented by the President and Chief Operating Officer of the corporation. I am pleased to report that the stockholders voted with the percentage of shares as shown in the screen, favorably adopting the proposed resolution approving the President's report. Therefore, Mr. Chairman, the resolution is approved.
The next order of business is the presentation and approval of the audited financial statements for the year ending December 31, 2020. Mr. Secretary, please present the proposed resolution on this item and the results of the voting.
Mr. Chairman, electronic copies of the audited financial statements for 2020 of the corporation have been posted as part of the definitive information statement and is available at the corporation's website. Mr. Chairman, management is proposing the following resolution for approval as shown in the screen. Resolved that the stockholders of Semirara Mining and Power Corporation be, as it is hereby approve, confirm, and ratify the corporation's audited financial statements for the year ended December 31, 2020. Mr. Chairman, I am pleased to report that the stockholders voted with the percentage of shares as shown in the screen, favorably adopting the proposed resolution approving the corporation's audited financial statement for the year ended December 31, 2020. Therefore, the resolution is hereby approved.
The next item is the ratification of the acts of the Board of Directors and Management from the date of the last annual stockholders meeting and up to the date of this meeting. May I ask the Corporate Secretary to explain the matter, present the proposed resolution on this item, and the results of the voting.
Mr. Chairman, our board and management seek approval and ratification of all the acts and resolution of the Board of Directors and various board committee exercising powers delegated by the board adopted from July 3, 2020 and until today. These acts and resolutions are reflected in the minutes of meeting of the Board of Directors and of the board committees, including elections of officers and committee membership, corporate governance policies, all matters covered by the disclosure to the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Philippine Stock Exchange. Stockholders' ratification is also being sought for all acts of management and officers performed in accordance with the resolutions of the board, various board committees, bylaws, and as part of the corporation's general conduct of business from July 3, 2020 until today. Mr. Chairman, management is proposing the following resolution as shown in the screen. Resolved that the stockholder of Semirara Mining and Power Corporation be, this is hereby approve, confirm, and ratify all the acts, decisions, and resolution of the Board of Directors, various board committees, and all acts of management since July 3, 2020, and until the date of this meeting. Mr. Chairman, I am pleased to report that the stockholders voted with a percentage of shares as shown in the screen, favorably adopting the proposed resolution, approving, ratifying, and confirming all acts and resolutions of the Board of Directors, various board committees, and all acts of management since July 3, 2020, and until the date of this meeting. Therefore, Mr. Chairman, the resolution is hereby approved.
The next order of business is the election of the Board of Directors for the year 2021 to 2022.
Mr. Chairman, in accordance with the bylaws of the corporation, its Manual of Corporate Governance, the SEC rules, the names of the following nominees were submitted to the Corporate Governance Committee, and each one has accepted and given their consent to their respective nomination. The nominees are Isidro A. Consunji, Cesar A. Benaventura, George A. Consunji, Herbert M. Consunji, Maria Cristina C. Gochanon, Maria Edwina C. Laperal, Josefa Consuelo C. Reyes. Nominated as independent directors, as shown in the screen, are the following: Rogelio M. Murga, Honorio O. Reyes Lau, Antonio Jose U. Perequet Jr., and Ferdinand M. de la Cruz. The nomination for directors closed on March 5, 2021. On March 15, 2021, the Corporate Governance Committee, in the exercise of its duties, determined that the 11 nominees are qualified to serve as directors of the corporation.
Mr. Secretary, may we have the results of the election of directors?
I am pleased to report, Mr. Chairman, that the votes cast for the nominees of directors have gathered at least with the percentage of votes as shown in the screen. With the number of votes, I certify that each of the directors have obtained sufficient votes to be elected as directors of the corporation. Moreover, the following resolution is hereby proposed to be adopted and approved as shown in the screen. Resolved that the stockholders of Semirara Mining and Power Corporation be, as it is hereby elect the following as directors of the corporation for the ensuing year to serve as such beginning today until their successors are duly elected and qualified. As regular directors, the following are elected: Isidro A. Consunji, George A. Consunji, Cesar A. Benaventura, Herbert M. Consunji, Maria Cristina C. Gochanon, Maria Edwina C. Laperal, Josefa Consuelo C. Reyes. The following independent directors have been elected: Rogelio M. Murga, Honorio O. Reyes Lau, Antonio Jose U. Perequet Jr., and Ferdinand M. de la Cruz.
The next order of business is the approval of the appointment of the independent external auditor.
Mr. Chairman, in accordance with the corporation's governance policy, the Audit Committee recommends the accounting firm Sisib Gores Velayo and Company, or SGV, as the corporation's independent external auditor. Accordingly, the Audit Committee proposes and the Board of Directors agree to endorse the appointment of SGV as the corporation's independent external auditor for the current fiscal year 2021. In this regard, Mr. Chairman, management proposes the following resolution as shown in the screen. Resolved that the stockholders of Semirara Mining and Power Corporation be, as it is hereby approved, confirm, and ratify the appointment of Sisib Gores Velayo and Company, or SGV, as the independent external auditors of the corporation for the current fiscal year 2021. I am pleased to report, Mr. Chairman, that the stockholders voted with a percentage of shares as shown in the screen, favorably adopting the proposed resolution approving the appointment of SGV as independent external auditor of the corporation for the current fiscal year 2021. Therefore, Mr. Chairman, the resolution is hereby approved.
Any other matters that require consideration by the stockholders?
There are none, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Secretary, are there any questions or clarifications from the stockholders?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. There are a few questions as shown on the screen. Question number 1, Mr. Chairman, from Mr. Gabitan. On EO 130 or 130, on the lifting of the moratorium on new mineral production sharing agreement of EO 79, the question is, how would this benefit the Semirara Group?
The lifting of the MPSA moratorium is a welcome development. In the meantime, we will revisit the visibility study of the cement project given the pandemic, current market conditions, and tightening credit standards. After all, it is the financial viability and other economic considerations which will dictate the progress of this project.
Question number 2 from Ms. Jesline Go. On your cement project, will this push through with the lifting of EO 79?
The opportunity to venture into cement project was contemplated in the past. Today, the economics of the project has changed, and we cannot tell until this COVID-19 pandemic will be over. We will revisit when economic recovery from this pandemic will be certain. There are still a lot of economic uncertainties right now. On a positive note, there is no more regulatory hurdle with the lifting of EO 79.
And the final question, Mr. Chairman, from Mr. Renante Magnaje. Can you comment on the Philippine energy mix? How is this transitioning over the next decade? And what role will Semirara be playing regarding this?
With the existing RE law and renewable portfolio standards, the government seeks to achieve a target of 35% for renewable energy in the generation mix by 2030. However, there is less implemented RE projects out of the 29,300 megawatt potential capacity with service contracts. The expectation is coal and oil-based energy will still be a significant player in the next decade. In 2019, Semirara supplies only around 15% of the total Philippine coal demand of 33 million metric tons based on DOE data. The core competence of Semirara is coal-based power, but under the DMCI group, we are looking for opportunities in renewable energy.
Mr. Secretary, are there any further questions?
There are no other questions, Mr. Chairman.
There being none, we will now adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much to our stockholders for attending. Stay safe, everyone.
To view this recorded webcast and to read our 2020 Annual and Sustainability Report, go to the links provided on your screen. For questions, clarifications, and concerns regarding our ASM, send us an email to corporatesecretary@semirarampc.com. Thank you and good morning.